by me.
Sorry, go ahead.
Why does it say that leave meeting?
Oh, don't leave meeting. You're on. You're fine.
Okay.
Okay.
So the house that's here by me is used mostly as a home for families that are homeless that are reuniting with their children, and so as you know, as a safe place, and so so that's kind of their main purpose with this house. They've got three other programs that they've started, which I thought were pretty cool as well. One of them is called CHESS, which is combining housing, education, and skills. And that's for young men. I think it's like 15 to 20 something. Yeah. 18 to 24-year-old men. And it's for them to be able to go to school and have some place to live. And there's quite a few of those young men have come out of the foster system and want to continue their education but have no place to live. And so this allows them to continue their education or go to a trade school or even just to get their GED if that's what they need to do. And then there's another program that they've started. They found that in the community college system, like there's like 1 out of 5 students in the community college system are homeless, are sleeping in their cars or couch surfing. And so they've started this program to target seniors who have an extra room and would like to have some company, and they're pairing them up with college students that can pay a minimum rent and in exchange for, I think it's like 5 hours of work around the house or meal prep or hangout time or whatever they decide that they want to do.
That's a really great program.
It's a great program. Such a great idea. Yeah, I love that. And then the last thing they started is called the Housing Connection Program, which is just kind of a collaboration that they have to get services for people that call them and come through their door. So they did really good on their 990s. They also got a score of 17. Okay. And there's only one person that that gets a salary. They also have a like a used clothing and housewares store, which is called Charity's Closet. And I've been bringing my stuff there for years, so I've known about them for a long time. And so a lot of the actual salaries, I think, of people that are actually on staff get paid through Charity's Closet and not from what's bless you.
Thank you. Yeah, Charity's Closet. I've heard of all of those. I think that Housing Connection is really a great fit. And why don't we do that more often? Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Anybody have questions for Barbara? So tell me, Barbara, how far is their reach? You said of Orange County. Presumably it's all of Orange County. Do they go from, the coast all the way inland? Do you have an understanding of really how broad?
I do not know. They do say that that they help 1,000 people a year.
Okay.
Programs, and that there's 85% of those in their resident programs go on to permanent housing.
Great. Nice compliment to some place like OC United that also, tries to assist foster kids aging out and being available instead of having them be, in their cars. Great. Thank you for presenting. And to let you guys know, I'm recording this for two people, for Nathan's dad and who else is out? Somebody else is out and asked me to record it. So just so you know, that's why we're recording. It won't be posted publicly. It'll just be shared with our class. If you feel, I know some people aren't comfortable being recorded, so if you want to turn off your cameras, feel free to do that. Okay. Speaking of Nathan, do you want to share I know you did your 990 score. Do you want to tell us about your organization?
Yeah, I can try. I did my 990 organization on For the Children. It's a week-long summer camp that's held in the mountains. So the one that's like in the one in California, because I volunteered at it before, and it was oh, it was up in San Diego. I think I'm not sure. And it's
Okay.
basically you're just with foster kids and you're you're with foster kids and I can't teach you right now.
So it's like a camp. You said a week-long camp?
Yeah, it's a week-long camp that you're spending with the kids.
Yeah. So you're one of the camp counselors,
Yeah,
or do you like you're like a
staff.
buddy? Okay.
Yeah, I was like staff just there because I wasn't old enough to be a counselor yet. But
Mhm.
you're just there doing like craft with the children and just activities. And then they scored an 18 out of 18 on the 990 analysis.
Nice. So would you say you chose them because you had personal experience with them?
Yeah, I would
Yeah.
say that. And
Yeah.
yeah, and it helps with the foster children. It's cool hearing their stories sometimes.
It's not easy stories to hear, huh?
No, there's some that are sad.
Yeah, some are sad. And some of the kids are a little traumatized too, I think, his stories I've
Yeah.
heard. They have a hard time. Yeah. Or maybe it's the first time anybody's actually ever been nice to them and done something, meaningful.
Yeah.
Yeah. Does anybody have any questions for Nathan? No?
Nathan, is this the same camp that you went to, or was it a different one?
I think it's the same camp. It's just like one overall organization.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
it's like and then they have like different camps throughout.
Yep.
Like
So they used to be called Royal Family Kids. For those of you who've lived in Orange County for a while, Royal Family Kids partners with various churches, right, throughout Orange County.
Yeah.
So is it your church that decided to go and host a camp? Or was it another church?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It was another church, but I was a part of that church before, so it's just like my church joined their church a little bit.
Oh,
Yeah.
cool. I love it. That's
It's
great.
still Royal Family. It's still Royal Family Kids Camp. It's just a little different now.
Yeah. Yep. I know For the Children's trying to expand in the services that they provide, to foster kids. So they're known by both names. Cool. Thank you. Good choice. All right.
Thank you.
Stella, how about you?
Hi. Yeah, so my organization is called Casa El Buen Samaritano, and it's so since I wanna be a nurse, then I thought something like in that like kind of healthcare field would be good. And this one came to mind because like my church supports it, but also I've actually volunteered with them, I think once whenever I was like little. My parents like took me to one of their things. And so pretty much there's this doctor who was like the son of like a pastor, and he went into healthcare but still wanted to like help people. And so he started these clinics out of different like churches would host them. And so now it's grown into this like pretty big nonprofit. And yeah, it's really cool. All of the doctors, I'm pretty sure, are volunteers, and there's no insurance required or payment at all, and it's just free healthcare. And it is mainly directed towards the Hispanic community, which is huge in Texas. And their main campus is in Missouri City, but they have them in Houston and all throughout Texas, I think. And on the 990 analysis, I scored a 16. But on all of the questions, there's only one person that gets a salary and it's really low. And then everybody else is volunteer. And then they scored 3 points on all of them except for one of the like sections. But it was the page 10, line 25, of how much of their expenses are management and overhead. So I thought some of that would be like because healthcare like things are really expensive. So I feel like that like being 1 point made sense. But
Yeah.
other than that, yeah, I just remember actually one of my since both my parents like have worked in hospitals, one of their friends who's a doctor actually volunteered with them and she really loved it. And I think one time we went to like one of their fairs and conventions and they're just really outgoing and really good with helping the community with expecting nothing in return. So yeah, I think that's about it.
Kind of falls into that category of freely giving things of value, right, to others.
Definitely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love that. I'm glad you found something that pairs up with something that's a passion of yours. That's really
Thank
great.
you.
Yeah, I think that free healthcare is really needed. And so do they do it like weekly or are they constantly open, providing a constant clinic atmosphere?
So I think that it's open like regular hours every day.
Okay.
So I'm guessing it would be kind of like 9 to 5. Like you
Yeah.
you come in just like a regular, like I guess inpatient or like just like a regular clinic
Yeah.
or doctor's office. But I think they do also have like it's very personal so that if somebody's in need that they can call and have that care also because definitely within ethnic communities there is a lot of hesitancy with like even reaching out to healthcare and like there's a lot of like issues just with that. So this is definitely helping bridge those and like calm fears that people might have.
Yeah, I agree. So touching on the idea that the 990 had a lower score in that category of management and overhead. So do you have that in front of you by chance?
Yes.
Okay, so go back to that page 10. I kind of want to get a
Oh,
feel.
the actual thing. Oh,
If you
I
don't, that's okay.
I can pull it up really fast.
No, we could talk about it like hypothetically. Oftentimes organizations will, like this type of organization, you guys might see a 16 and you might see that this is low in this category. Sometimes they inadvertently put the wrong information in that category as overhead, number one. Number two is in this case, my guess is that they have to have some hired staff. And that's probably one of the higher categories is salaries. Even though there's only one person directly shown as getting a salary, you might have a ton of part-time nurses, part-time technicians, phlebotomists, reception. So that might end up going into their overhead instead of being reported at the top in that first section where the salaries are listed. So that's why you might see an imbalance or having it be too high. The other thing too is if they have like a brick and mortar building, there are rent costs if they don't own it. So sometimes the buildings based upon what they're doing might offset some of the reason why, it's a little high in that area. So not a bad thing, just something for you guys to be aware of, kind of look at some of the categories and why it might be too high. This might prompt you to even give somebody a call if you've got like a 15 or a 16 on an organization and ask them, so, hey, why are your expenses so high in this category? And if you can get explanations, sometimes, we can come back and work on that, especially if it's something that's of a passion of yours and you don't want to like necessarily give up on it. So just some additional thoughts. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, good job. Any questions for Stella, you guys? Okay. Let's go to MJ. We'll do this last one and then we'll move on to the curriculum. Kirsten, you about ready next week? Can you present? I didn't get a chance to ask you.
She wants me to, I can do it next week too.
Sure, yes.
Okay. Jillian, are you ready? Oh, okay. We'll
Jeez,
have.
I just didn't want to speak for her before she was here, but I knew she had it together. But
Okay, right on. We'll have you both present then. Go ahead.
all right, I know she's already given me an eye roll because she knows that I made a presentation about it. But
Ooh.
am I able to? It says you've disabled screen sharing.
Hold on just a second.
Just a couple slides. I figured if I was gonna write it down, I might as well put it into a PowerPoint real quick.
He makes
You-
slides every day for
Every
his work,
day.
so he's a
You
little-
can be one of those fabulous overachievers. All right. We'll take it. Fire away.
There we go.
goof.
Yep, you're
Yep, good.
okay. So the organization that I've selected as of now is the OC Children's Therapeutic Arts Center. So for me, throughout school, I participated in music as a part of the Irvine Public Schools. I played trumpet from 5th grade all the way through senior year. And I also did ceramics for a big portion of that time too. That was kind of in direct result of my grandfather, who was actually the ceramics teacher at my high school. As I've continued to get older, I've kind of gotten away from that a little bit, just with life in general.
Yeah.
But I've been trying to get kind of back into that in some way, shape, or form, and was trying to use the Giving University in this class as a way to kind of help potentially facilitate some of that. And so I've been looking primarily for arts organizations in the area, and came across this one just actually a few days ago. She actually had found it at one point and then lost it just.
And you stole it.
And then
No, I was trying
no.
to find one to help him.
no,
and
she was
I
looking for me.
couldn't remember the name.
Yeah, and then when I was searching, actually, when I was on a work trip this past week, I was able to dig it back out. So their mission and their vision from their website, and the top part here is just straight copied from that. So they look to
Okay.
provide innovative, artistic, educational, and therapeutic programs that are inspiring and transform children, at-promise youth, adults, and their families to their highest potential. So this group overall, they started back in 2000. And their focus initially was on kids with special needs. And they started primarily as just an after-school program. And after just a year, they started to grow from just doing kids with special needs to looking to all youth. And so they've now gotten up to the point where they're looking at and supporting youth from all ranges, both from socioeconomic backgrounds, incomes, whatever it may be. And so right now, most of their families served are from both the multicultural, monolingual, and low-income immigrants. The group itself is based in Santa Ana, which is a high Hispanic community here in Orange County, but they do provide services around the entire county at the same time. As far as the services themselves, here are just kind of some bullet points off of their website. So the main areas that they have are arts education, early childhood, community wellness, workforce development, family mentoring, parks and rec, and therapeutic arts. Now, what's the common theme line through all the stuff has to do with arts education and instruction. And so anything that they have has that through line going for it. So anything from dancing, music lessons, studio art like painting, media art such as like photography, things of that nature. They have a early childhood or preschool program where they, as they said on their site, are doing focused both on just your traditional school ready preschool, but also focused on arts education, kind of as a stream to that at the same time. The community wellness program had a whole bunch of different hats underneath it, and it had both what seemed to be more traditional counseling or support type services, as well as mentoring for the organization or just for the community, as well as art therapy, which kind of covers a few different areas, but focused on kind of helping facilitate that baseline. The workforce development program was a little bit interesting to me as well. It focuses on kids or young adults between the ages of 16 and 24, and trying to look at teaching them various job skills and various skills overall to help transition them, from more of an academic perspective to going into the workforce, but focus primarily on that age. The family mentoring is kind of going back to their roots a little more, focusing on those with disabilities or special needs. And that is really meant to be a support or not a crutch, but like more of an outlet for families that have a kid with special needs, right? Having that service, having that support circle, having that net at which to kind of facilitate and have those kinds of conversations with those that may be in a similar situation as they are. The Parks and Rec program is done as one with the Santa Ana city itself. And they receive a grant to help facilitate that one. They title it a youth violence prevention program. And from that, they are focused on grades 2 to 12. And it's an after school program where they're doing various arts instruction and kind of all the same art as far as music, dance, and studio. And then their therapeutic arts is kind of the baseline where they kind of got started creative therapies, using art as the medium to provide the therapy. As far as 990 forms, the one on GuideStar was from 2019. They scored a 17 on that.
Great.
The only point that they missed was due to the how much of the funding came from government grants, it looks like.
Yeah.
On this one,
Yeah.
which kind of wasn't too much of a surprise for me, just given where they were getting a lot of stuff from the city.
Yeah.
Then I went on to the IRS website and did pull their one from this year. And they have one more point that got docked off, which I think is similar to kind of what you were talking about for Stella's. It had to do with how much of expenses were management and overhead. They didn't have any employees listed in the 170,000 range. They had no salaries for that matter. But there could be a couple different explanations for that, as you touched on.
Yeah.
But it sounded like a pretty fun little organization. I don't know too much about them. Still very much in the early stages of understanding. But I thought it was a great kind of a mix between the art that I was kind of looking to be the baseline, and then some of the same population that Jillian served with her community. Fun little crossover at the same time. So
That's great. I appreciate that you checked both years, because that shows an increase, obviously. I know that organizations in 2020 through 2022 had additional expenses actually because of COVID, because they were still trying to keep their employees covered, and they went to online, and a lot of them had expenses due to changing their curriculum and how they were reaching out to the families. So I wouldn't be surprised if some of that had to do with how much they had to outlay on that note. You know, so it's not awful. I mean, they're still passing. And I think that it sounds like they're doing a great job. I love that workforce development segment. So good choice. Anybody have questions for MJ? Okay, thank you very much. Jillian.
I looked up two organizations because one, they were under the they only had the easy return, and I haven't gotten their financials yet, so I wasn't able to do it. So
how about for the sake of time, how about you present the one that's currently a passing score?
yes, that's what I've got. Yep.
Okay, great.
So their name is Tara's Chance, and they are actually a therapeutic riding center that is in Fullerton, so not far from here. That I was interested in looking at them because I've supported them, gone out and mentored, because they don't have any medical professionals on staff. So therapeutic riding is riding for people of all abilities. But the training is much more like based on riding skills and just how to adapt those, versus looking at a horse as a medical tool, which is what we do in hippotherapy. So I've gone and mentored and looked at some of their more complex riders and helped them. So they've actually asked me to consult them building a hippotherapy program, which would be great because I'm maxed out and have like a wait list of 10. And if I can mentor someone else, then more people can be helped than just me doing it myself. But it's nice to know that, you know, they're as solid on paper as they seem when I'm with them, which they are. They have a score of 18. Their staff, I was like very surprised at actually what like their executive director makes and all that. They're very true to their values, which is great. And so they serve, you know, kids and adults with disabilities. And then they have therapeutic riding, and then what they call more like equine assisted. So like different levels, but then they're hoping to add hippotherapy with my help this year. So
I know, that's awesome. Wow. Good networker you are. Spreading the love. You guys want to ask Jillian any questions? How about for the majority of us that don't know what hippotherapy is? So are we bringing hippos in with the horses?
The same question I asked on our first date. So
Like, what are you doing? Hippa? Like
hippo is actually Old Greek for horse. So hippopotamus means like water horse. So hippotherapy is treatment with the help of the horse. So it's medical professionals. So my staff are all doctors of physical and occupational therapy or speech and language pathologists. And we use the horse's movement like I would dosing a medication. You know, for example, it has been found to be as effective as prescription meds for people with ADHD if you dose the movement of the horse appropriately for somebody with that diagnosis. And that's just one example. So we use it as a treatment tool, whereas therapeutic riding is more a fun and activity, and it's working on riding skills and things like that for people of all needs, but we're not necessarily looking at that functional daily life skill outcome. It's more of just like a fun recreational activity.
Yeah, great. Thank you for that explanation. Excellent job. However, I am interested in your other organizations. Hopefully you'll get that, info too. So right on. All right. Thank you very much, y'all. So we will try to plan to hear from Farzaneh, Kirsten, Texas, if you're ready, Gracie and Kamea, and then Quentin, Ernesto. So we'll try to do that next week at the pace that we are going. I'm not sure we're going to get all the curriculum done. It's kind of the nature of having a large class like this within our 7 weeks. So is there any objections to any of you extending one more week to finish off our curriculum together? Is that can I get like, can't do it, thumbs down, can do it, thumbs up? Okay, I see a majority of thumbs up. All right, very cool. So there's my assumption is that we're going to need that extra time, but should I be able to stay on pace and everybody gets their org reviews done, we will see how it goes. All right, then let me switch gears here. I'm going to share my screen from I don't want that one, that's Whitney's org review. All right, sorry, I am not totally prepared here. Let me just switch gears a little bit. I've got the wrong document opened. Okay, so we're going to finish off our conversation from last week, which was about freeing up resources. The one thing that I really didn't get to that I would like to get to is kind of more of the conversation of pointing out, we talked a little bit about apps, using budgeting apps and the importance of using budgeting apps. The significance of using an app is, I think, especially in this day and age when we're tracking everything electronically, and even for those of you that are, still in school, this is going to end up being a necessity for you all. We're currently on the cusp of a recession. So, pinching pennies was something that, I can remember doing in 2008, and before that in the 1980s, and before that in the 1970s. And, it's cyclical. So we're going to go through times where we are going to have ups and downs. And I think when we have financial, fiscal ups and downs, it's super important to make some decisions about how we're going to spend our money, how we're going to use our disposable income, and how it's so important that if we're actually going to support some of these organizations that we've been talking about, that we figure out creative ways of freeing up our resources. I will tell you, I love to cook, but because of the demands of this job, I don't always have the time to cook, and I end up having to grab, sushi on the way home, or my husband stops at Taco Bell, and, I would say probably a third of our food budget, unfortunately, has to do with fast food or getting something that's been prepared for us. And that typically ends up being more costly than if I had stopped to make. And I know you can do food prep on Sundays, but I'm teaching a GU class, so doing food prep on Sundays doesn't always work for me. Nevertheless, instead of beating myself up, I just get to the reality check, which is I need to manage my budget, and I need to make sure what I'm doing is not overspending. So as you can see on the screen, these are some of the top budget apps. I know the Freemans use one, Dave Ramsey's Every Dollar. This one that's shown here, it's an easy app to download. It's pretty intuitive. There are a number of different ones that go to the extent of charging for it. It becomes an investment in your financial future. Those are things you might want to consider. Using Mint, is that the one you guys use? Freeman's, you use Mint? Yeah. Do you still stick with the free version, or do you pay to use, free version?
Yeah.
Yeah, they have a version where you just don't get the ads, but
Okay.
you just use the free version.
Yeah. Quicken, if anybody's like a Quicken geek and you love spreadsheets, Quicken has theirs, and it's pretty easy to use if you're intuitively that way. Envelopes is interesting. It kind of goes along the similar lines to Dave Ramsey, whereas you are putting money into those envelopes and being able to set them aside, knowing that, you know, you're paying for your utilities, you're paying for your rent, you're paying for your food, and then you've paid yourself, you have tithed or given money to a charity, and then you have disposable income. So we all, you know, none of us are perfect, and I'm not going to say that I'm doing this very well. I haven't, as I've shared, you know, about my experience with, you know, consumer credit counselors and debt and carrying too much debt I didn't want to carry, but I had to come to that conclusion that I had to change. And so this is one of the ways that we've worked to change. I would encourage any one of you to consider something, even doing like Barbara, where you're still doing it on paper. Part of the reasons why, and you can even go to the extent of, you can see these categories on the slide itself. Let me pop up my slide here. You can do it, you know, manually. Do a start quick budget, set aside some categories, do it on paper. The reason that this is important, and doing it if you are married or have a significant other, doing the budget together so you're both on the same page, so you don't end up arguing about some category that you put down here. Knowing that every month is different, you know, if you are a, you know, coupon shopper, or you are, you know, hitting multiple stores, you'll discover that some of the costs are different on any given month, any given week, or any given day. You want to start though at the very beginning, which is 0 at the beginning of the month, recognizing what your costs are and start to deduct. And so you get to the point where you know what's available, what's expected, what you have to pay for utilities. Start with your most important categories. You know, if electricity is important to you and you want to keep it on, start with electricity and add it to your rent, underneath your rent. And don't be afraid to trim your budget. It doesn't mean it's forever. Sometimes trimming the budget's important for the moment. You've got an expense, you're trying to save for a car, you've got a vacation that you want to go on, you know, those are important to you as well. Trim back maybe your eating out spending, and making a schedule and sticking to it, tracking your progress, and then, you know, keeping a buffer. The idea is to have, you know, 2 months of salary in your savings account. How legit is that for someone that is currently in school and your outlay is constantly going out to pay for school? That's going to be different than if you are in a career and already, you know, saving money. So these are some of the things that you need to be considering even early on, is how are you going to manage that as things change? And as I spoke of, you know, last week about cutting up your credit cards, it can be actually pretty freeing. And I know that it's one of those, you know, taking a step off, you know, a cliff, it may feel like, but the freedom that's there afterwards is really a good feeling, because you eventually overcome and become content. So we talk a lot about these things because not only is it good for giving, but it's also good for you, because you will end up in the long run have a better perspective on yourself and your self-worth when you've got your money either under control or handled, or you've got a picture of it, and instead of it ruling you, you are in control of it. So I'm going to skip through a couple of slides here. I'm going to get to the retirement section. So the philosophy of Steve Bray, actually, let me start here so you can have a couple of resources if you like to read. This is a really good resource for reading. The recommended reading list. Oops, not that one. Okay. And I'll send these out to you guys so that you can have a chance to go through the rest of the slides that I've skimmed past. So recommended reading, if you're, you know, really looking to get a handle on it and want to do more than just an app, these are some of the things that are helpful. Ron Blue is currently a large financial planning CPA firm, but he started it many decades ago, and he's got a great perspective on, not allowing the money to rule you, as we talked about, letting it not be the evil in your life, but rather something you have control over. And then, of course, Dave Ramsey. You can either read his books or tap into a lot of his videos who are already on YouTube. And then, Randy Alcorn speaks to money on a faith type basis and what it is that you are spending and whose money it is, and the whole philosophy behind living a biblical life. And so that one's a good book as well. So Dave Ramsey's Financial Peace University, some people find him a little caustic because he tells the truth and he kind of pokes you in the eye on occasion. But I would encourage any of you who are at all curious or wanting to get, a handle on how you're spending. I would, definitely say that he's one of those that's kind of front and center in helping people get out of that debt and stop allowing that to be like this, monkey on their back. Okay, so philosophically, Steve Bray, our founder, also the owner of Power Plus, his philosophy is he's going to work until he's dead. Working to the point where you don't need to retire, but that you're enjoying things, that you're a consultant, that you're still participating, you're still purposed. The philosophy in his mind is so many people will end up, retiring, and then they just end up sitting in the recliner and life kind of goes downhill from there. If you've got, ideas and purpose and things that are exciting to you, maybe your job is a drudge, maybe you need to shift gears, maybe you need to look at something new. And so the idea is to find other ways to be involved and engaged. There's really no historical basis for retirement. If you look biblically, you won't find a reference of anyone, taking a powder. You're going to find times that people are pausing to pray or pausing to be thoughtful. But the last 6,000 years, people needed to work as long as they were able to, just to survive and provide. Go to the 1900s in the United States and things changed. Our Social Security started. We had a couple of wars. Our country wanted to support veterans and provide safety and security for families that had lost their husbands or fathers. But as this notes, families used to stay together. They provided for grandparents. It was interesting. I've got the kids class, and as I've mentioned, a few of them live in other countries, and the comments that they had made is that there wasn't, as even Farzaneh has explained, there wasn't homelessness. People and families just took care of each other. How beneficial that was. I think it still is. Can we get back to it? That could be one of our solutions, right? For some of our ills that we have in this country. And again, that's my soapbox, so I will move off the soapbox. 200 years ago, very few people died of old age. But as the economy grew in the 19th century, there were child labor laws, 40-hour work weeks, and that's when retirement became invented. So what came first? Division of labor and productivity. When Social Security was passed and the retirement was set at age 65, the life expectancy of a man was, does anybody know when Social Security was passed? You can unmute yourselves, chime in.
Around 70.
Okay.
70, I believe.
Again?
70, I believe.
Okay. So the thought maybe was that person wouldn't live very long. So 68 when Social Security was passed. So that's why the retirement age was set at 65. Clearly, we have grown to live longer. The average age is 79 now, and that's so much based on our medicine, our health, our food has gotten better for us. We're more aware of the things that we didn't know back then in the 40s. So that was then. And you know what, sure, they've changed the age to retirement age for Social Security to get your best benefit is at 70. But people are still, retiring at 63, 65. My question is what are they doing and how bored are they? And let's, encourage people to find ways to be productive and be a part of something important. Retirement's become a main goal of so many Americans, good or bad, right? We can sit and poke fun. There are plenty of people that need to retire. Their jobs have really been taxing. They're physically disabled. They no longer maybe have the mental capacity or acuity to continue to work. The idea of sticking to a job and having purpose is really for those that have more to give, more to participate in. Go out and start volunteering for a nonprofit, use that passion that's stirred up inside to do something amazing. Go out into the mission field, be a part of something more, not just sitting around. So unfortunately, people are gearing the work towards the day when they get to sit around and play golf. How much of that is true legitimately, I don't know, but I guess from this standpoint, this is a little on the sarcastic side. Talking about retirement being 60, 55, 50. Hey, is that you, Gracie? Can I get you to mute?
Oh,
thank you. So, financial planners, which I used to be one, I loved having a client who had, already 3 million in the bank and was getting this great severance package, and he was 55. And so we were all planning all these trips he was going to go on and how much insurance he needed and the money he needed to leave his grandkids. And, we used all kinds of websites and calculators, and we're definitely stretching the bean counter mentality to find ways to extend, this particular client's life. It was very interesting, though, in this particular example, when I talk about him, is that he lasted 3 years in retirement and started another business. And he said, I just got bored. I didn't want to be retired. Golf only lasted so long, that fun glory time of sitting around. So take that idea and take retirement, kind of stand it on its head and say, you know what, that's not beneficial for us in the long run. We are meant to be productive. So a study for 18 years was based on 4 groups. The research done was, people retired early and were healthy. They were healthy and retired at 65. They were less healthy, retired early, or less healthy and retired after 65. So the healthy group was 11% less likely to die if they waited till after 65. I know these are morbid statistics, but it makes you think, like, okay, what's my plan going to be? How am I going to age well? The less healthy group was 9% less likely to die if they waited until after 65. So even though the health was not good, they didn't pass away soon after if they waited until they were older. So the idea is to change your perspective. I think we've been changing a lot of perspectives with this whole class, right? From the beginning, we're changing your perspective on who to give to, why, making you think about what you're passionate about. If you're going to do something and you're going to do something that makes you excited. Hang on to these things that, all of you that have presented so far. I mean, combating human trafficking. Philip did, a youth mentor school, homeless intervention, healthcare, foster kids, do something meaningful. Change that perspective of why you think you need to go and do nothing all day or play golf. Let go of the notion that you deserve a time in your life when you don't have to do anything. Why not now fit in a day where you don't do anything rather than wait till the end? Set aside some time and you're thinking, yeah, right. You're funny. How am I going to do that? Well, I don't know. Talk to the person next to you. Talk to the people in your life and say, hey, I'd like to work a day into my week where I have quiet time, or I get to go do something that is really would bless me, that would refresh me, that would encourage me. Instead of waiting for that moment where you get that deserved time, think about doing it now. It could make you so much more productive farther into your life if you're thinking about how to do it now. If you enjoy your work, plan on working. We got a guy we just celebrated at Power Plus, a 20-year anniversary. He's 74. He's still working for us. He's one of our collectors. He's one of the most successful collectors we have. And he said, Steve Bray asked him, so you ready to retire? He goes, hell no, I'm not retiring. He says, I'm going to stick with Power Plus as long as you'll have me. You know, that was an attitude that I liked hearing. That's the idea of working as long as you are able. And if you don't enjoy it, get out and find something that makes you excited. Go talk to one of these organizations that you just found out about, like Barbara. Just, you know, what did you say that it forced you to get off the hot seat and go out and talk to them? You know, I know you do great work with North County Project. You guys are already doing so much to reach people, to make a difference in their lives, but there are other things, right, that can get us fired up. It can be exciting, right? Again, following up on changing your perspective, think about what can you do to make today more fulfilling instead of thinking someday in the future will be better. Saving for retirement only based on your reduced ability to earn in the future. Maybe that's where your savings for retirement goes into play. Maybe you're not going to make that $200,000 a year job. Maybe you're going to end up in a place where you're making 50, but you know you're going to have health expenses. So make sure you set that aside. Make that your nest egg so that it allows you to continue to be productive and a part of purposeful things. If you want to work towards a time when you can devote all your time to volunteer work, that would be a worthy alternative. And then be generous with the rest of the money that you have. Be willing to give freely the things that you value that we've talked so much about. Thoughts or questions on any of that, you guys? How do you view retirement? Those of you who are still working, what's your perspective on retirement?
Yeah, from my perspective, it's definitely a much different viewpoint than what you're kind of taught and what just society, pushes forth, that you should be working so that you can retire, and then then you get to relax and do what you want to do after you retire. So it's just a much different mindset than kind of what you're growing up to look for.
Yeah. Okay. So if all I've done tonight is put a thought into your head to think differently, then that's good. Good. Ernesto, you had a comment, or MJ?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, for me, like, I've always kind of looked at retirement much more as a thing of, yeah, something I was looking forward to, or am looking forward to, but not necessarily just to be sitting around and doing nothing, because I know that would drive me stir crazy. But kind of being able to potentially be more purposeful or intentful with my time on not necessarily having something else or someone else dictate it in that sense, but being able to spread it across multiple facets, like instead of just for one, working the job I have now versus supporting or doing a variety of different things.
Yeah, agreed. Good perspective. Ernesto, how about you?
Yeah, I agree. I don't think the retirement will be like a good fit for me because it would really drive me crazy. I just like to be occupied on something. I mean, I understand some people might like to sit and relax, but I mean, it's just like if I can evolve in something else, like volunteering, helping people, there's need all over the place. So if I can be helpful of doing something, providing assistance or anything, I'll be like more than happy to. Because honestly, I dread that moment. I don't want it to happen.
Yeah. I'm kind of, I feel that same way. I don't want to dread it. That's not something I'm super excited about. I don't know how long I'll still have the same capacity to keep up with someone like Steve Bray, but definitely like that, idea of having purpose and doing something purposeful. Felix, how about you?
Well, currently right now, I haven't worked for 5 years due to injury. But when I was working, I wasn't as involved as I am with church, even with the whole, even my 10%. But I now that I've been seeking God faithfully now for the year and a half, and I've been taking a lot of Holy Warriors classes with my brother at church at the Way, it's made me look at things different. And even though I haven't worked for 5 years, I've been blessed because I have a family who helps me. I went through a divorce. I have a 6-year-old for most of the time. So I feel like God, he does everything for a reason. I feel like working, because I was making pretty good money. I was working for Southern California Edison and had my Class A. So I was working a lot of hours. I was making pretty good money. But I feel like if I was working now, I'd probably be where I was at. I feel like my job is to teach my daughter how to fear God, not to depend. And even though she's 6 years old, I've learned that I don't hide nothing from her. So I feel like I need to be that godly figure in her life, even when it comes to my reaction. To be like, why are you mad, or why are you reacting that way? But I don't want to go off subject. I feel like right now, since I'm here with my brother, I do a lot of serving. I try to do as much as I can serving at church. And even when I do get blessed with a certain, I do give up to it, and I see how God. To make a long story short, like the last 5 years I haven't been working, I've been blessed. I've always had.
Your purpose. Your purpose was something else, right?
Yes. I feel like God's calling me to like minister to kids, juveniles, or maybe even adults, or even that come out of prison, or in that. And that's what I'm seeking, and I'm asking God to show me.
Yeah, that's great. Good point of view, and really a great illustration of continuing to be purposed. And you could say, yeah, I've not been employed, and you can look at that as a bad thing, but I think it's really a perspective that's changed your trajectory. And it sounds like you are purposed. You are doing things that are really valuable. Even if it's not relying on a dollar, right, that's coming into your bank account, or relying on a job, you are still purposed. That to me is a good perspective. Barbara, how about you? I don't know that you're really retired. You are busy.
Yeah, I'm not really retired, but the one thing that comes to my mind is involvement with my grandchildren. And that is one place that gives me great joy. And also, like you had talked about earlier about families taking care of each other, I feel that my ability to help out with my grandkids also gives my kids an opportunity to live a healthier life. And, for them to, we have to kind of do some divide and conquer. There's so many little ones, but, like that gentleman that was just talking was, the care and the training up of the next generation is really important, and it's really important to me.
Yeah. So Hillary Clinton, back when she and her husband were in the office of the president, said something that, whether or not you agree with their politics or not, she said something that it takes a village to raise a child. That is spot on to your comment, in that we have to be there for one another, and you being there for your family keeps your kids on task and on focus, and it's everybody pulling together to do something amazing. Our investment in each other can look so different. I mean, how many people are on this? 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 15, 16 people are on tonight. And all of us have 16 different points of view on how best to do life and do family and make an impact in the world. So I think, doing what is most important and having purpose, I think, is one of those top of the list, right, ideas. Our bucket list is, how do we have purpose, and how do we help our families, and how do we give back with a healthy perspective? So great, thank you. Anybody else have a comment you want to share about retirement or your point of view?
I would just have a question for you, I guess, is that retirement is definitely talked about and pursued as like something super important that you have to be saving for, that workplaces will match. It's, you know, it's like a big, it's like insurance. It's like a big thing in life. So yeah, what do you think about that? And would you rather save in a different area? Or what do you think about saving for retirement?
Yeah. Okay, financial planner hat back on. Anytime an employer is going to match amount, take advantage of it. If you are working where you have an employer that has a 401k or a Roth IRA available and they're going to match any portion of it, put in and have deducted from your paycheck to beat that match, because that's free money that goes towards your retirement, and you want to take advantage of that and use it to build up. I still think saving for retirement is important. If you are financially able to do more than the match, I think most definitely you need to consider it, and you need to balance it, because our 401k opportunities through employers are what's called pre-tax. So the money comes out of your paycheck before it's taxed. So that means you pay less tax. So let's say you make $1,000 a week, you take 100 of it out to put into your 401k. So you are only being taxed on $900 instead of $1,000. So your taxes that you're giving to the government, you know, that we talk about, that dips into our penny saved is a penny earned, you know, example, you're not giving as much taxes because it's going into your retirement. So what will happen at retirement is that you will then be able to access that money, and you will be in a lower tax bracket because you won't be making as much. So when it comes time to pull that money out, you are paying less taxes than you would if you were paying taxes at your current age. Let's say 40, and you're making, you know, the most, you're at your peak. I think that there are many advantages to investing in 401ks when your employer is willing to do that and set that and establish it. As for how you invest and where you invest, it's important to have balance between pre-tax money and taxed money, taxed earnings. Some of the vehicles and vessels that you can use to put money into, like life insurance that has a cash value, has importance because while it doesn't make a bunch of doesn't have a lot of growth immediately, it's not like quick, like a mutual fund or a stock. It's a slow growth over a long period of time. And so when you can have consistent premiums paid into to provide you with life insurance, as well as provide you with a cash value that grows and grows and grows over time, those are equitable types of vehicles to be investing in that give you balance. And you know what, when you get to be 65 and maybe you need to slow down, but you're not done working, you can tap into some of that investment money to help you balance out what you were making and help you to be in a comfortable place to kind of shift how you decide to live life when you are of retirement age. Does that kind of help add to your thought process?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Let us shift. We've got like 15 more minutes. I'm going to start this segment on the adverse or mental health segment. Social and mental poverty is really what it's called. We started this segment, I want to say 3 years ago. One of our board members participated in a training similar to what Whitney was talking about at the laboratory to combat human trafficking. It requires more than just a little bit of involvement when you work with foster kids, kind of the way Nathan was talking about that. He's not, you know, he didn't go through the training, but the training is necessary when you start to engage with either foster kids or youth who've had trauma. One of our board members went to it with an organization called OC United, who provides support for the foster care kids that are transitioning and aging out. They did a training so that he could volunteer, and so that was a part of it, and this is where it came from. I think it's important to address it because of just the message of Giving University, because our message is, to ignite generosity, but really more to leave the world a better place. I think we need to be more aware of who we're engaging with, who we see on the street, why they're on the street, or even someone who has maybe a short temper that you work with and you don't really know why, but they're always angry. This is the idea that we need to have a more generous outlook with how we give people grace or patience, have patience with them maybe, leaving the world a better place. So as you can read, our world is surrounded by people who are suffering. Most of you presented organizations that address the concept of human suffering, whether it's through supporting disability, supporting people who don't have economic means, supporting the idea of human slavery, which, holy cow, this is 2023 and yet we have human slavery. I mean, I'm sure all of you are, if you really think about it, you should be scratching your head and should be in protest over that. Mentoring people, super important, to have an impact, to have a positive impact on someone. So what do we want to do to help? What organizations should we support? How should we change our perspective on mental health, or even just the idea of a poor attitude, poor outlook? And this goes along the lines with, the idea that we want to freely give, we want to share, we want to live out our daily lives as people who are constantly thinking about others. I know that we are all typically self-involved, and that's fine. But, if you have to go so far as to, do what I did, like put a reminder on this puppy so that I remember to engage with my kid, so that I remember to give my husband encouragement, so that I remember to call a friend, do those things, put it on that calendar that manages your whole time. Think about ways to engage with others and be more mindful of whatever's going on with them. So taking that a step further, mental poverty, societal poverty. What do you think the state of homelessness in the US? Getting better, worse, status quo?
Worse.
Worse. Okay. Why do you think it's worse? What are you seeing that makes you think it's worse?
I think that a huge part of it is just mental illness in general. And I think that there's just a lot of unseen suffering inside of a lot of people right now. And I think COVID, unfortunately, brought out a lot of it.
Yeah, we are in definitely a circumstantial season, right, where the homelessness is worse. And most of this comes from 2019 statistics. Okay, so let me keep going. So in the longer term, it's better. In the short term, it's worse. And that's where we're looking at a societal shift in what's happened economically. California is getting worse. Other states are getting better. There's definitely a philosophy for that. If we think of homelessness, even in other countries, like we have shared in the past, few weeks, homelessness is either just not present in other countries because there's different societal norms. There's different social, welfare systems in like Sweden and Norway. They look at homelessness completely different than we do. So why is California getting worse than most of the other states? I think it's kind of what you just touched on. I think Colorado is experiencing a similar thing with the mental health issues that are just being pressed upon other people. So if we're looking at, again, we're looking at a statistics from 2007 to 2019 of people who are experiencing homelessness. So if we just look at all homeless on the top row, you can see that over the past, 12 years, homelessness has dropped. It's had its fluctuations, right? People in shelters has pretty much been a fluctuating between what 390,000 to the height of what 403,000 to now a low of 2019 a low of 356,000, and this is across the country. Okay. And then there's the unsheltered people. That is definitely the place I think where we are most cognizant of. Forgiving University are the people that are unsheltered. Why are they unsheltered? You know, people will say, well, you're just poor. You should, you know, do something about it. You should change that. Well, not everybody can. Part of the reason they can't has to do with, like you said, the emotional mental health. The issues of trauma are drastic. They leave a lasting imprint on the brain. The crazy part about the brain is that it heals. It's an amazing organ. It can recover. You know, new neurons can grow when there's been a traumatic brain injury. But the other thing that's amazing about the brain is it's like it keeps layering on the trauma, and we don't necessarily let go of it, especially if we've not received care. They can easily be re-traumatized by a reaction. They call them triggers, right? Well, gosh, I was really triggered by that guy. The way he was talking to me sounded just like my dad used to yell at me, you know, and so there's that emotional side where it was like layered on top of us, and there's that memory. And when that memory pops up, we have this trauma issue, and our brain remembers that, and our brain reacts. Early childhood, you know, the things that you probably remember as a kid. If any of you lived a difficult childhood, I can pretty much bet you that that stuff still pops up and still affects how you manage life in general. So there's a measurement of trauma, and we're going to go into a really short quiz here in a sec. But these adverse childhood experiences, and I would imagine that Jillian's probably really aware of this. Any of you who've done any, you know, engagement, like even Nathan, even though you were just, you know, one of those helpers with the foster care kids, you probably recognize some of these behaviors of these traumatic things that have come out and how kids respond. So this was studied over 30 years. The statistics, though, as it says, staggering, still kind of get me. You know, I wish that I could just rush in and fix it, but I can't. So instead, I teach a class like this to help all of you become more aware of this segment of the population that needs our care and attention. So as you've probably read, heads up, it may cause you to be triggered. It may cause you to feel, you know, vulnerable. If you don't want to participate in scoring, you absolutely do not have to. If you want to, great. If you want to share, great. If you don't want to share, I'm not going to make you. I'll talk a little bit about myself. If you feel like you want to share about you, please feel free to. There's no right or wrong answer here. This is really for your edification, but also too, if you can take your own personal experiences and correlate them to someone else, it's really beneficial. Okay, so these are based on questions that have to do with what it was like when you were a child. So questions 1 through 5. When you were a child. So we're talking about, you know, no older than, you know, 16, 17, 18. If you had a family member that was incarcerated at the time, and family member could be mom, dad, aunts, uncles, grandparents. So you're pretty much immediate family at one point, if that's a yes. Did you have a family member that was an alcoholic or a drug user? Did you have a family member that was mentally ill or had attempted suicide? And again, you know, between the time you were 0 to 17, 18, you can add a point for that. And if you just want to keep track on your hands and fingers, you know, that's fine. You don't need to necessarily keep notes on this. Did you experience the loss of a parent, either through divorce, a death, or because you were adopted out or fostered? Last question for when you were a child. Oops. Was one of your parents physically abused by the other? Did you witness one parent abusing the other. And this can also be if you witnessed like your grandparents being abusive to your mom or dad, or an abusive like a sibling, like your dad, was always engaged in being abusive to a sibling, as an example. Okay. All right. Did everybody get the questions? Okay. So continuing, when you were a child, were you physically abused often or very often? That's one point. And physically abused can be the being a punching bag or being inappropriately touched. Were you often humiliated or insulted by a parent, belittled, bullied, by someone close to you? So your parents, grandparents. That's one point. Touched in a inappropriate way physically by someone more than 5 years older than you. So not another child, but an older child and above. That's one point. Did you often go hungry or have to wear dirty clothes? Last question, did you often feel that no one in your house thought you were important? Which is categorized as emotional neglect. You were kind of just a fixture in the house. No one really looked at you. Yeah. Okay, so we're going to kind of analyze the numbers here. So if you scored 0 and you could safely say that you didn't score any point on that, 36% of the population in this particular study, 36% had none of these things happen to them. People who scored 1 or more, 26% of the study population had scored 1. 16% of the study population scored 2. 10% of the study population scored 3. And 12% of the population scored 4. So that was basically 1 in 8 people within the study group. At least 4 of those 10. So taking this a step further, this really has to do with what percentage of that study population. And those of you who work with homeless, this isn't the whole entire homeless population. This was just within this controlled study. 0 to 1, 2% of them, anyone who scored 0 to 1, 2% ended up homeless. 2 or 3 score, 6% were homeless. A score of 4 or 5 showed a 13% amount of homelessness. And anyone who had 6 or more of those questions answered as yes, 27% of that population of the study were homeless or experienced homelessness at one time. Kind of going back to the idea like Whitney shared about the mental health aspect of what she's kind of seeing or we're all seeing, pandemic or even before the pandemic. So this was done before the pandemic. I would imagine probably in the next 2 to 3 years, we're going to start to see different numbers for sure. It'll be interesting for us to update these stats to see how much this has changed. And we'll need to, I think we'll need to do that just to be, relevant. So people who scored a 4 or more, so compared to 0. So if you had 0, the people who had 4 or more were 3 times more likely to be diagnosed with bipolar. And if anybody understands what bipolar is, it's kind of like episodes of manic highs and manic lows. very drastic, very dramatic, very hard to control, hard to live, hard to manage, just manage the world. This population is 5 times more likely to be diagnosed with chronic depression, 6 times more likely to use or abuse illicit drugs, and unfortunately 10 times more likely than the population who had 0 were more likely to attempt suicide. Continuing, 40% were more likely to drop out of high school. It's just really too hard to focus as teenagers, especially if it happened in your childhood. Twice as likely to not be able to hold down a job. 3 times more likely to regularly miss work for a variety of reasons, just either, needing a mental health day or physically. Going back to the idea that the brain, remembers things, sometimes that means that we are not as physically as healthy as we would want to be. And 4 times more likely to have serious problems performing a job, attention span, capacity to remember things. Simple tasks are difficult for this population in this study group. Okay, where am I? All right, I'll get through the behind the scenes, the science behind the statistics slides, and then we'll cut out for the night. We'll finish these next week. Actually, I'll stop here. Does anybody want to share initial thoughts on some of this? What's your general impression? Shock? Already have that knowledge?
I didn't necessarily have the knowledge or the numbers behind it. Sadly, it's not too surprising, I guess, to some extent, right? But to see some metrics behind it, or I'm a science numbers guy, so it's always kind of good just to not that any of what you just said is good, but for me, it's from a point of understanding.
Yeah. Well, it's helpful, right? It helps us know how to navigate, who we're, interacting with on any given basis, whether we are at work, volunteering, interacting with someone at the grocery store. Why is somebody overreacting over, a price on a grocery item? What's going on with them? I think what it does is it gives us a better basis for having some compassion. I fall into the category of 6 or more. I've never experienced homelessness. I guess I'm one of those that's really become more independently stubborn. My issues were of neglect, and it created a fierce sense of independence. That is good, but on the flip side, it's not good because, I've struggled with accepting help from people. I've been married for 27 years. I know that it's been difficult to be married to me because there are times where I'm like, nope, I'll do it. I don't need you. I'm good. And even in my work, mode, overly capable, but yet there's still that part of me that's, that traumatized little kid that would very much love someone to help me, right? So it's a catch-22. So, okay, Kamea, go ahead and pop off. Thanks for being on the class, especially since you were at the beach. Take care. So keeping these thoughts in mind, we will talk about some more of those statistics that go behind the scenes for trauma. Recognizing, I hope, for any one of you that engages with people that have had trauma, that you will develop that deeper heart of compassion, and just really starting to care for others, being aware, maybe just changing your perspective a little bit. So thank you guys for your attention. I really love your organizations. What's really exciting to me is so many of them are brand new to me, which is cool. I love it. I'm glad that we're finding all of these great organizations to be able to look at them and even, go to the extent of encouraging them. So thanks you guys very much. Take care, you all. It was good to see you. And Nathan, tell your dad I'll send him the recording. Okay. Bye, guys.